"You're fired." Those were the first words Madeline Flowers heard as she stepped into the most breathtaking garden she'd ever seen in her life. She blinked, adjusting the worn cap that protected her golden blonde waves from the relentless July sun, and looked at the man who had just pronounced her professional death sentence before she'd even begun. Theodore Ashford Kane looked exactly like a cruel millionaire should. A jaw too square to be kind, gray-blue eyes as cold as a Siberian winter, and a suit that probably cost more than Maddie's car. Well, the car she had before selling it to pay for Grandma Phyllis's hospital bills. "I'm sorry." "What?" Maddie dropped her toolbox onto the Portuguese stone floor with more force than necessary. "I was literally hired 42 minutes ago. I received the email at 9:14 this morning, and now it's 10 o'clock. Theodore consulted a watch that probably had more functions than the International Space Station. "My property manager made a mistake. You clearly don't have the qualifications to care for a garden of this caliber." Maddie felt heat rising up her neck, and it wasn't just from the sun. She had 2 degrees in horticulture, 3 years of experience in botanical gardens, and had transformed her grandmother's tiny backyard into something that Gardens and Landscapes magazine had photographed for a feature on Miracles in Small Spaces. "I don't have qualifications?" She crossed her arms, stained with honest dirt from an earlier job that morning. "Mr. Ashford Kane, I can identify every plant in this garden, tell you exactly what each one needs, and probably save at least 30% of your rose collection that's dying over there in the east corner from excess nitrogen in the soil." His eyes narrowed. For a second, something crossed that marble face. Surprise, interest, indigestion. "Impossible. My previous gardener graduated from Cambridge. And yet your Rosa Damascena have mildew." Maddie pointed to the historical roses that probably cost a small fortune. "Your azaleas need more acidic soil. Your lily of the valley are competing with the hostas for space, and someone planted French lavender where it should be English lavender, considering the climate here." Theodore fell silent. A long, heavy silence. The kind that makes you question whether you've said something terribly wrong, or absolutely right. "You identified all of that in—" He checked his watch again. 3 minutes? 2 minutes and 40 seconds, actually. I spent 20 seconds listening to you unfairly fire me." Maddie smiled. In that way her grandmother always said lit up entire rooms. Her angelic features, framed by those luminous blonde curls and illuminated by eyes the color of spring meadows, made the smile even more radiant. "So, shall we reconsider this premature dismissal?" For the first time, Theodore Ashford Kane looked disconcerted. He opened his mouth, closed it, adjusted his Italian tie that didn't need adjusting, and then did something that clearly caused him physical pain. He backed down. "You have a 2-week probationary period." "Oh, such overflowing generosity," Maddie retorted, already crouching down to examine a hydrangea bed. "I'll try to contain my overwhelming gratitude." She didn't see it, but Theodore almost smiled. Almost. What came out was more of a muscular spasm at the corner of his mouth, quickly suppressed. "The rules. You don't enter the house. You don't talk to the staff beyond what's strictly necessary. You don't touch anything except the plants. You don't use the bathroom, breathe too loudly, exist in a noticeable way." Maddie stood up, wiping her hands on her work overalls that had patches in 3 different places. "Got it. I'm a ghost who takes care of plants. I can live with that. You are insufferably irreverent. And you're insufferably rude, but here we are, making it work." She pulled on her work gloves. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an entire garden to save from systematic neglect." Theodore stood there longer than necessary, watching as she began to work. There was something about the way Maddie touched the plants, with reverent delicacy, murmuring things softly to them as if they were frightened children. Something that caused a strange discomfort to settle in his chest, right where there used to be only efficient emptiness. Her beauty was undeniable, even covered in dirt and sweat, blonde hair catching the sunlight like spun gold, delicate features that belonged in a Renaissance painting. a grace in her movements that made even kneeling in the dirt look elegant. She looked like an angel who had decided to get her hands dirty in the service of growing things. "Why do you need this job so badly?" The question came out before he could filter it through his usual layer of professional indifference. Maddie paused, holding a rose branch with extra care. "My grandmother is sick, very sick, and gardens have always been our thing. She says every plant tells a story." Her voice became softer. "I want to earn enough money to take her to an experimental treatment in Boston. It's expensive. Very expensive. So yes, I really need this job, Mr. Ashford Kane." Silence again. But this time, different. "Theodore," he said finally, surprising himself. "Just Theodore." Maddie turned, light green eyes wide with genuine surprise. "Really? Don't get used to it. I'm still your employer." He was already turning away, fleeing from that uncomfortable feeling of almost humanity. "And you're still on probation." "Of course, Theodore." The way she said his name, playful but not disrespectful, made something strange happen in the region of his stomach. Probably that double espresso from Matteo's that morning. He returned to the mansion with steps faster than normal, categorically refusing to look back, which meant he didn't see the huge smile Maddie let escape, nor the little victory dance she did among the flower beds. 3 hours later, Theodore was in his third-floor office, fingers flying over the keyboard as he methodically destroyed a competitor company's merger proposal. He was good at this. Demolishing corporate dreams was practically his art form. "Mr. Ashford Kane?" The voice of Clementine, his 62-year-old assistant who tolerated him with the patience of a saint, sounded through the intercom. "The new gardener is requesting access to the tool shed. And? It's locked. And only you have the key." Of course it was locked. Everything was locked. Theodore didn't trust anyone, not even himself on particularly challenging days. He descended the stairs with palpable irritation, key in hand, prepared to make it clear that interruptions would not be tolerated. What he was not prepared for was finding Madeline Flowers covered in dirt from her golden curls to her boots, with a mud smudge on her nose, and the most radiant smile he'd ever seen. In the afternoon light she looked even more ethereal, like some mythical garden spirit, beautiful and wild and completely unaware of the effect she had. Her blonde hair had escaped its tie, framing her face in soft waves, and there was something about the combination of angelic beauty and earthy authenticity that made his breath catch. "I discovered the source of the drainage problem in the south garden." She was practically bouncing. "The previous irrigation system was installed by by someone who didn't know what they were doing. But I can fix it. I just need some tools and—" "Are you okay? You have a strange expression." Theodore realized he was staring, specifically staring at the way the afternoon sun created a golden halo around her, how the dirt on her face somehow made her look more real than anyone in his stratospherically polished social circle, how someone could look like an angel and still be covered in mud and utterly captivating. "I'm perfectly fine," he lied, opening the shed with more force than necessary. "Take what you need and don't break anything. Every tool here costs more than my monthly salary, I know." Maddie rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "You really need to work on those conversation skills. Ever considered therapy?" "I've considered hiring people who don't constantly provoke me." Where would be the fun in that? She entered the shed, murmuring approvals about the tool collection. "Wow, this is a gardener's paradise. You have a complete set of Felco pruners, and a real Dutch hoe, and, oh my God, is that a hand-forged spade?" The genuine excitement in her voice did something treacherous to Theodore's chest, something warm and inconvenient. "You really love this, don't you?" He hadn't meant to ask the question out loud. "Gardening." Maddie turned, hugging a spade like it was a baby. "Love is an understatement. Gardens they're living promises, you know. You plant something tiny, care for it with patience, and eventually it blooms into something beautiful. It's hope with roots." Her eyes met his. "Even the most neglected gardens can be saved. They just need someone who believes in them." It was getting difficult to breathe properly. Theodore attributed this to dust in the shed. "Just don't kill my plants," he said, and left before he did something ridiculous like continue the conversation. But as he returned to his office, Theodore made the mistake of looking out the window. Down below, Madeline Flowers was humming something as she worked, completely immersed in her world of earth and leaves and possibilities. She looked like a painting come to life, golden and glowing and impossibly lovely. And for the first time in years, Theodore Ashford Kane found himself wishing to be part of a world that didn't involve spreadsheets, board meetings, and the carefully constructed loneliness that kept him safe. "Absurd," he murmured, returning to his computer with renewed determination. But his eyes kept drifting to the window. And down below, oblivious to the chaos she was beginning to cause in the fortified heart of the city's cruelest man, Maddie sang to the roses and promised them better days. Sometimes the best stories begin with dismissals that never come to pass. This was one of them. Theodore had a problem. Well, technically, he had several problems. A hostile takeover attempt, a board meeting on Friday, and a persistent mother who kept sending him profiles of suitable women who looked like they'd been manufactured in the same personality-free factory. But his current problem wore dirt-stained overalls and hummed off-key while revolutionizing his garden. It had been 5 days since Madeline Flowers had invaded his carefully controlled world, and Theodore found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, looking forward to coming home. "Absolutely not," he muttered to himself, signing a contract with unnecessary force. His pen nearly tore through the paper. "Sir?" Clementine appeared at his office door, one eyebrow raised in that way that said she knew exactly what was bothering him. "The gardener is asking if she can adjust the fountain in the west garden. Something about water pressure and koi fish happiness. Koi fish don't have feelings. Perhaps you should tell her that yourself." Clementine's smile was entirely too knowing. "She's quite insistent. And might I add, she's done wonders with the rose garden in less than a week. Even Marcus commented on it." Marcus, his head of security, commented on nothing except potential threats. If he'd noticed the garden, something significant was happening. Theodore found himself walking toward the west garden before he'd consciously decided to move. The afternoon sun painted everything gold, and there, knee-deep in the fountain pool with her overalls rolled up, was Maddie. Her blonde hair was piled on top of her head in a messy bun that defied gravity. Her face was smudged with algae, and she was talking to the koi fish. I know. The pressure's been terrible. "But Uncle Theo here has been neglecting you, hasn't he? Don't worry, Maddie's got you." "Uncle Theo?" His voice came out sharper than intended. Maddie spun around, nearly losing her balance. She was holding a wrench and wearing the biggest grin he'd ever seen. Even covered in pond scum, she was luminous, like sunshine had taken human form and decided to torment him specifically. "Oh, I didn't hear you lurking there." She waded toward the edge. "Your fountain system is from the Dark Ages." "Well, technically from 1987, which for fountain systems might as well be the Dark Ages. The pump's dying, the filter's clogged, and your koi are suffering from poor water circulation. They're fish. They're your fish. Don't you care about their quality of life?" She climbed out, water streaming from her rolled-up overalls, and somehow managed to look like a fairy-tale princess emerging from an enchanted pond. "I can fix it, but I'll need to order some parts. About $300. Theodore almost laughed. She said, $300, the way his business associate said, 3 million, with weight, with respect for the number. "Order whatever you need." "Really?" Her eyes, those impossibly green eyes, lit up. "Just like that? No lecture about fiscal responsibility?" "I'm a businessman, Miss Flowers, not a tyrant." He paused. "Despite what you might think." "Oh, I don't think you're a tyrant." Maddie grabbed a towel, drying her arms. "Tyrants actually care about something. You just pretend not to." The observation struck something in his chest, sharp and accurate. "You don't know anything about me. I know you deadhead the roses when you think no one's watching." Her smile was gentle, not mocking. I've seen you from the tool shed. You have good instincts. You just need someone to tell you it's okay to actually care. Theodore felt exposed, like she'd peeled back layers he'd spent years reinforcing. The roses are an investment, property value. Sure they are. She didn't believe him for a second. That's why you whisper to them. I do not. But his protest died because he had been whispering to that stubborn Madame Alfred Carrière that refused to climb the trellis properly. He thought he was alone. Apparently, he was never alone anymore. It's okay, Theodore. The way she said his name, soft and warm, made something dangerous bloom in his chest. Gardens have a way of breaking down walls, even yours. Before he could respond, before he could figure out how to respond, his phone erupted with its emergency ringtone. His brother. I have to take this. He turned away, but not before catching the understanding in her expression. Theo, we have a situation. His brother Sebastian's voice was tight with stress. The Singapore deal is falling apart. They want you there tomorrow. Personal appearance, no exceptions. Tomorrow. He had the quarterly review, the foundation gala. And inexplicably, he'd been planning to watch Maddie work on the eastern garden beds because she'd mentioned something about heritage peonies that had made her eyes dance with excitement. Book the flight, he said, hating every word. I'll be there. When he turned back, Maddie was wringing out the towel, trying very hard to look like she hadn't been listening. She failed spectacularly. Big important business emergency? She asked lightly. Singapore. Could be gone a week. Why was he explaining? He never explained. The garden will be fine. Gardens are patient. They'll wait for you. She tilted her head, studying him with unnerving intensity. The question is, will you miss them? Them. Not it. As if she knew he'd been thinking about the garden in oddly personal terms lately. Thinking about her in terms that had no business existing between employer and employee. It's just plants, Miss Flowers. Right. Just plants. That smile again, the one that said she saw through every defense he'd ever built. Have a safe trip, Theodore. Try not to terrorize too many people in Singapore. He wanted to say something cutting, something that would re-establish the distance between them. Instead, he found himself asking, How's your grandmother? Maddie's expression softened into something achingly vulnerable. Having a good week, actually. She asked about my handsome employer with the sad eyes. I told her you weren't sad, just perpetually grumpy. I don't have sad eyes. No, you have eyes like a stormy ocean. Lots of depth, potentially dangerous, definitely hiding something. She picked up her toolbox. But that's none of my business. I'm just the ghost who tends your plants, remember? She walked away, leaving wet footprints on the stone path, her blonde hair catching the late afternoon light like a beacon. Theodore stood there, phone still in his hand, feeling like he'd lost an argument he hadn't known he was having. Sir? Clementine had materialized beside him with supernatural timing. Your car for the airport is ordered for 6 a.m. Good. Shall I inform Miss Flowers she has full access to the grounds in your absence? She already has full access, Theodore said, then caught himself. When had that happened? When had he stopped thinking of her as a security risk and started thinking of her as... What? What was she becoming? Very good, sir. Clementine's smile could have powered a small city. I'll make sure she has my number in case of emergencies. She seems like a very capable young woman, and might I say, quite lovely. Clementine. Just an observation, sir. That night, packing for Singapore, Theodore made the mistake of looking out his bedroom window. Down below, illuminated by garden lights, Maddie was still working, at this hour, for him. She moved between the plants like a dancer, graceful and sure, and something in his chest cracked just a little bit more. He was in so much trouble. And the worst part? He was starting not to mind. Singapore was a nightmare wrapped in humidity and terrible coffee. Theodore sat through his 4th merger meeting in 3 days, watching grown men argue about decimal points, and found himself thinking about peonies. Specifically, heritage peonies that Maddie had been so excited about. He didn't even like peonies. They were fussy, high maintenance, and dropped petals everywhere, sort of like the woman who'd hijacked his thoughts from 8,000 miles away. Mr. Ashford Kane, your thoughts on the third quarter projections? Theodore blinked, realizing he'd completely zoned out, while mentally calculating if it was morning or evening back home. Morning, which meant Maddie would be in the East Garden right now, probably talking to those ridiculous peonies like they were old friends. The projections are acceptable pending environmental impact assessments. He had no idea if that made sense, but everyone nodded sagely. His phone buzzed. A text from Clementine. Garden update. Miss Flowers has worked miracles. Also, she asked if you prefer white or pink peonies. Says it's urgent. It absolutely was not urgent. Peonies weren't urgent. Singapore deals worth $40 million were urgent. But Theodore found himself stepping out of the conference room and calling home like a man possessed. Ashford Kane residence. Clementine sounded far too amused. Put her on. So polite. One moment, sir. Rustling sounds then. Theodore. Perfect timing. I'm having a crisis of floral proportions. Just hearing Maddie's voice did something stupid to his pulse. It's 2 a.m. here. Oh. A pause filled with genuine guilt. I'm so sorry. I didn't think... Should I call back? You already interrupted a meeting. Might as well tell me about this earth-shattering peony emergency. He tried to sound irritated. Failed completely. Okay, so the heritage plot can support 12 plants. But I found this gorgeous supplier who has both Sarah Bernhardt, that's pink, absolutely stunning, and Duchess de Nemours, classic white, very elegant. But I can't decide which would look better with your architectural style, and I refuse to make this decision without consulting you because it's your garden and... Are you laughing? He was, actually laughing. When was the last time that happened? You called at 2 in the morning to ask about flower colors. I texted first. Clementine said you were awake. Maddie's indignation was adorable. Adorable. He was using words like adorable now. This was a problem. And it's not just colors, Theodore. Peonies are investment pieces. They'll outlive both of us if planted correctly. Something about the phrase, both of us, made his chest tight. Get both. Both? Really? That's like $1,500 with soil amendments, and Miss Flowers, I've spent more than that on a single dinner. Get both. He softened his tone. You're the expert. I trust your judgment. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, you trust me? Why did she sound so surprised? You've proven yourself competent. Wow, Theodore Ashford Kane thinks I'm competent. Should I frame this moment? But she was smiling. He could hear it in her voice. How's Singapore? Making corporate giants weep? It's tedious. Hot. The coffee is terrible. He paused. How's the garden? Missing you. She said it lightly, teasingly, but something in those two words hit him directly in the solar plexus. I mean, the roses are. They're not used to me deadheading them. I don't have your gentle touch. I'm not gentle. You are with things you care about. You just don't let yourself care about much. Before he could process that devastating observation, she continued, Oh, your koi are thriving with the new pump. I named them, by the way. Hope that's okay. You named my fish. You're welcome. There's Fitzgerald. He's very literary and dramatic. Cleopatra, total diva. And the little orange one is Bruce. Bruce. He has Bruce energy. You'll understand when you meet him properly. She laughed, and the sound traveled 8,000 miles to wrap around his heart. When are you coming home? Home. Not back. Home. 2 more days if negotiations go well. He found himself adding, I'll want a full garden tour when I return. Really? A tour? Will you actually listen or just glare at everything in that smoldering way you do? I don't smolder. Theodore, you smolder like a brooding literary hero. It's very distracting when I'm trying to work. The flirtation in her voice was unmistakable now, and Theodore felt himself standing on the edge of something dangerous and tempting. Miss Flowers, Maddie, please. We're discussing peonies at 2 a.m. I think we're past formalities. Maddie. Her name felt right in his mouth. Warm, real. I should go. Meeting. Right. Important business. Go be intimidating and successful. Then softer. And Theodore, thank you for trusting me with the peonies and everything. After they hung up, Theodore stood in the Singapore humidity, staring at his phone like it held answers to questions he was afraid to ask. Inside, his business partners were waiting. Millions of dollars hung in the balance. His entire empire could shift based on the decisions made in that conference room. But all he could think about was a blonde angel covered in dirt, naming his fish and revolutionizing his garden, and somehow, impossibly, making him feel something other than empty. Sir? His assistant Marcus appeared. They're asking for you. Tell them I need 5 minutes. Theodore pulled up his phone and did something he'd never done in 15 years of business. He looked at pictures of flowers. Specifically, Sarah Bernhardt and Duchess de Nemours peonies. He had absolutely no idea what made one better than the other, but Maddie's excitement had been infectious. He typed out a text. Get extra, for your grandmother's garden too. Her response came immediately. You're going to make me cry in front of the peonies. They'll think I'm watering them with tears. Then, thank you. Grandma will love them. You're not as heartless as you pretend. Theodore stared at those words for a long moment before pocketing his phone and returning to the meeting. But something had shifted. The numbers didn't seem as important. The deal, while significant, felt hollow compared to the warmth spreading through his chest. He was falling for his gardener, a woman who talked to fish, argued about flowers, and saw through every wall he'd built. A woman who was temporary, seasonal, completely inappropriate for someone of his status. A woman who, in less than 2 weeks, had made him feel more alive than he had in years. Gentlemen, Theodore said, taking his seat with newfound clarity. Let's expedite this. I have somewhere I need to be. Somewhere was home. Somewhere was a garden being transformed by impossible hands. Somewhere was Maddie, waiting for him whether she knew it or not. And for the first time in his carefully controlled life, Theodore Ashford Kane wanted to be somewhere more than he wanted to win. Theodore's flight landed at 6 a.m., and he went directly to the office like he always did. Showered in the executive bathroom, changed into a fresh suit, reviewed the morning reports. Everything normal. Everything controlled. Except he left work at 2 p.m., claiming a headache. Clementine's knowing smile followed him all the way to the elevator. The mansion appeared different somehow, brighter, more alive. As his car pulled up the drive, Theodore saw why. The gardens had exploded with color and life. Roses climbed trellises with renewed vigor. The fountain sparkled in the afternoon sun, and new beds of flowers created rivers of purple and gold throughout the grounds. And there, in the middle of it all, was Maddie. She wore a sundress today instead of overalls, pale yellow that made her blonde hair look like liquid gold. She was kneeling beside the peony bed, hands deep in soil, completely absorbed. She hadn't heard his car, hadn't noticed him standing there like an idiot, drinking in the sight of her. The prodigal millionaire returns, she said without looking up. I can hear you breathing from here. Very creepy, by the way. How did your cologne? It's very distinctive. Also, Marcus texted me that you were home. Now she looked up, shading her eyes against the sun, and smiled. That smile. The one that made him forget about quarterly reports and stock portfolios and every defense mechanism he'd ever developed. Welcome back. Come meet your peonies. Theodore found himself walking toward her, loosening his tie because suddenly it felt suffocating. They're just flowers, Maddie. Just flowers, he says. About Sarah Bernhardt peonies that people literally get on waiting lists for. She stood, brushing dirt from her dress, somehow making the gesture look graceful. You have no appreciation for the finer things. I have a $19 million art collection. Art doesn't smell like heaven and attract butterflies. She grabbed his hand, actually grabbed his hand with her dirt-covered one, and pulled him closer to the bed. Look. See how the pink has those deeper fuchsia streaks, and the way they're positioned to catch morning light? This is poetry, Theodore. Living, breathing poetry. He wasn't looking at the peonies. He was looking at her face, animated with passion, glowing with genuine joy. When was the last time he'd felt passionate about anything? They're beautiful, he said. But he wasn't talking about flowers. Maddie's eyes met his, and something electric passed between them. The air felt charged, heavy with possibility. Her hand was still in his. He should let go. He definitely should let go. He didn't let go. I missed, she started. Maddie! A voice called from the side gate. An elderly woman in a wheelchair being pushed by a nurse waved enthusiastically. Sweetheart, you didn't tell me Mr. Ashford Kane was back. Maddie pulled her hand away, color flooding her cheeks. Grandma Phyllis, what are you doing here? You think I could stay away from those peonies you kept talking about? The old woman had eyes the same shade of green as Maddie's, bright with mischief despite her frail appearance. And I wanted to meet this mysterious employer who buys flowers for old ladies he's never met. Theodore felt himself being assessed by someone who saw far too much. Phyllis looked at him the way Maddie looked at plants, seeing past the surface to what lay beneath. Theodore Ashford Kane. He extended his hand, then realized it was covered in dirt from holding Maddie's. Apologies, I've been playing in the dirt with my granddaughter. Phyllis's smile was wicked. Good. She needs someone who isn't afraid to get their hands dirty, metaphorically and literally. Grandma, Maddie warned, but she was smiling. What? I'm old and possibly dying. I'm allowed to be direct. Phyllis wheeled closer to the peony bed. Oh, Maddie. Darling. They're perfect. Just like the ones we had when you were small. The vulnerability in Maddie's expression made Theodore's chest ache. I remember. You taught me their names in French. Sarah Bernhardt was a famous actress, Phyllis said, touching a bloom gently. Beautiful, talented, and completely unapologetic about who she was. Rather like someone else I know. She glanced meaningfully at her granddaughter, then at Theodore. Mr. Ashford Kane, thank you. This old woman is in your debt. It was nothing. The words felt inadequate. Maddie did all the work. But you said yes. You saw value in something beyond profit margins. Phyllis's gaze sharpened. That's not nothing. That's the beginning of wisdom. Theodore had negotiated with world leaders, faced down corporate sharks, and commanded boardrooms with ruthless efficiency. But this tiny old woman in a wheelchair made him feel like a student being evaluated by a particularly insightful teacher. Grandma needs to rest, Maddie interjected, shooting Theodore an apologetic look. The trip tired her out. I'm fine. But yes, I should go. Phyllis patted Maddie's hand. Walk me back to the car, and Mr. Ashford Kane. She fixed him with that knowing stare again. Don't wait too long to say what needs saying. Life's too short, and gardens don't tend themselves. After they left, Theodore stood alone among the peonies, feeling like he'd just experienced something profound without fully understanding it. What needed saying? What was Phyllis implying? She likes you. Maddie had returned, quieter now. Grandma doesn't like many people. Says most folks are all flash and no soil. And I have soil? You're starting to. She smiled softly. Singapore changed you. You're less... She gestured vaguely at him. Less what? Less Theodore. More human. She stepped closer, and he could smell her. Earth and flowers and something uniquely her. It's a good look on you. Maddie. He didn't know what he was asking for, didn't know what he was offering. Just knew her name was the only word that made sense. I know. Her eyes searched his face. Me too. They stood there, suspended in a moment that felt stolen from time itself. The garden bloomed around them, bees hummed. Somewhere a bird sang, and Theodore Ashford Kane realized he was standing at a crossroads. One path led back to safety, control, the ice-cold empire he'd built. The other led toward warmth, risk, and a blonde angel who talked to fish and made flowers grow and saw him, really saw him, underneath all the armor. Your probation period is over, he said finally. Maddie's face fell slightly. Oh. Which means you're officially hired, full-time. With benefits and a salary increase. Theodore, and access to an unlimited garden budget because you've proven you know what you're doing and I... He stopped, swallowed hard. I trust you, completely. Her smile could have lit the entire estate. Thank you. That means everything. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't a kiss in the garden. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, beginnings were the bravest thing of all. The charity gala was Theodore's personal version of hell. Fake smiles, faker conversation, and women in designer gowns who looked at him like he was a prize to be won. His mother had been circling him all evening with Victoria Pemberton Stone, a corporate lawyer with perfect teeth and the personality of a tax audit. Theodore, darling, Victoria was just telling me about her family's summer home in the Hamptons, his mother cooed. Fascinating, Theodore said flatly, scanning the ballroom for an escape route. We should summer together sometime, Victoria purred, touching his arm with calculated casualness. I'd love to show you my garden. The word garden made something twist in his chest. A real garden, with dirt and imperfect flowers and a blonde angel who made everything make sense. Excuse me, Theodore extracted himself without ceremony. I need air. He found himself on the terrace, loosening his bow tie when his phone buzzed. A photo from Maddie, a blurry selfie of her covered in mud, grinning like a maniac, with the caption, "The irrigation pipe exploded. Bruce is judging me. Send help or wine." Theodore laughed, actually laughed, loud enough that several people on the terrace turned to stare. He didn't care. He called her immediately. Theodore. She sounded breathless. Shouldn't you be schmoozing with the elite? I'd rather talk to someone who's currently losing a battle with a pipe. He smiled, something he'd been doing disturbingly often lately. How bad is it? Well, I'm soaked. The West Garden looks like a swamp, and I think I accidentally created a new water feature. She laughed, that musical sound that did ridiculous things to his pulse. But the roses are safe, so I'm calling it a win. Where's Marcus? Or Clementine? Marcus is at the gala with you, and Clementine went home hours ago. It's just me and my poor life choices. A pause. And Bruce, who remains unimpressed. Theodore made a decision that would horrify his mother and probably end up in society columns. I'm coming home. What? No, you have your important charity thing. It's torture dressed up as philanthropy. I'll write them a check. He was already walking toward the exit. Don't touch anything else. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Theodore, you can't just leave your own gala. Watch me. He hung up before she could protest further, ignoring his mother's scandalized expression as he strode past her, ignoring Victoria's confused calls, ignoring everything except the pull toward home. Toward Maddie. His driver looked surprised but said nothing as Theodore loosened his tie completely and shed his jacket. By the time they reached the mansion, he'd rolled up his sleeves and looked decidedly un-billionaire-like. The West Garden was indeed a disaster. Water everywhere, mud coating the stone paths, and in the middle of it all, Maddie. She'd pulled her hair into a messy bun, her clothes were plastered to her body, and she was wrestling with a pipe that seemed determined to drown them both. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. You actually came, she gasped, looking up at him with wide eyes. In your tuxedo. Former tuxedo. It's about to become a casualty. Theodore waded into the mud without hesitation. Show me what needs fixing. For a moment, Maddie just stared at him. Then, who are you, and what have you done with Theodore Ashford Kane? Maybe I'm tired of being him. The words came out more honest than intended. Maybe I'm tired of pretending I'd rather be anywhere but here. Something shifted in her expression. Something warm and wondering. Okay then. Grab that wrench and prepare to get dirty. They worked side by side for an hour, covered in mud and water, laughing when things went wrong and celebrating when the pipe finally cooperated. Theodore couldn't remember the last time he'd done physical labor. Couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this alive. Got it! Maddie shouted triumphantly as water finally flowed correctly. We did it! She turned to celebrate and slipped on the mud, falling directly into Theodore. He caught her automatically, arms wrapping around her waist, and suddenly they were pressed together, both soaked and muddy and breathing hard. Her hands landed on his chest. Her face was inches from his. Those green eyes, reflecting garden lights, looked up at him with something that made his heart stop and race simultaneously. Hi, she whispered. Hi, he managed. You left a gala for a broken pipe. I left a gala for you. The truth, simple and terrifying. Maddie's breath caught. Theodore? I can't stop thinking about you. The words tumbled out, unstoppable now. You've invaded every corner of my life. I smell roses and think of you. I see sunlight and think of you. I'm in the middle of million-dollar deals and wondering if you've eaten lunch or if you're talking to the koi fish or... I think about you too, she interrupted softly. Constantly, inappropriately. You're my employer and I'm your gardener, and this is probably the worst idea ever, but... Theodore kissed her. Or she kissed him. Later, neither could remember who moved first. It didn't matter. What mattered was the feel of her lips against his, soft and perfect and tasting like rain and possibilities. What mattered was the way she melted into him, fingers curling into his muddy shirt. What mattered was that everything, every defense, every wall, every carefully constructed reason this was impossible, crumbled completely. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Maddie laughed. We're covered in mud. I don't care. Theodore rested his forehead against hers. I'd destroy 1,000 tuxedos for this. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, and it's about ruined formal wear. Her smile was radiant. You're very strange, Theodore Ashford Kane. You make me strange. You make me human. He cupped her face, thumb brushing her muddy cheek. You make me feel. Good strange or bad strange? Terrifying strange. Perfect strange. He kissed her again, softer this time. Maddie, don't. She pressed a finger to his lips. Don't say it yet. Not here. Not like this. When you tell me you love me, and you will, I want to remember every perfect detail. Not us covered in mud arguing with plumbing. When I tell you, his heart hammered. Presumptuous. Am I wrong? He looked at her, really looked at her. Blonde hair escaping its bun, face smudged with dirt, clothes ruined, standing in a muddy garden at midnight. She looked like chaos and hope and everything he'd been missing his entire life. No, he admitted. You're not wrong. Her smile could have powered cities. Then we have time. All the time we need. She took his hand, lacing muddy fingers through his. Come on, let's get cleaned up. And then you're going to tell me everything about that gala you abandoned for me. As they walked toward the mansion, hand in hand, Theodore realized something profound. He'd spent his entire life building an empire, acquiring things, winning at everything. But this, Maddie's hand in his, her laughter in his ear, the promise of tomorrow, this was the first thing that actually mattered. The garden had given him more than beautiful flowers. It had given him home. The morning after the kiss, Theodore woke up smiling, an occurrence so rare that even he found it unsettling. He had a video conference at 8, back-to-back meetings until 3. and a dinner with investors he couldn't cancel. But first, he needed to see Maddie. He found her in the rose garden, exactly where he knew she'd be. She wore overalls again, hair in a ponytail, humming something cheerful. When she saw him, her entire face lit up like sunrise. "Good morning, Mr. Ashford Kane," she said formally, but her eyes danced with mischief. "Sleep well?" "Terribly. Someone kept invading my dreams." He moved closer, unable to help himself. "You?" "Best sleep of my life, actually." She grinned. "Must be all that satisfying pipe repair." "Just the pipe repair?" He reached for her hand. "Well, there might have been other contributing factors." She let him pull her close, standing on tiptoe to kiss him softly. "Good morning, Theodore." It felt perfect, natural, like something they'd been doing forever instead of just beginning. Then his phone erupted with notifications. 23 missed calls, 47 texts, and one very long voicemail from his mother that started with, "Theodore Ashford Kane, what have you done?" "That can't be good," Maddie observed as his expression darkened. Theodore scrolled through the messages, his stomach sinking with each one. Photos of him leaving the gala early, speculation about his mysterious disappearance. And worst of all, a gossip column headline, "Billionaire bad boy ditches society, darling for secret rendezvous." "They don't have your name," he said quietly, relief mixing with dread. "Yet." "Theodore, what's wrong?" He showed her his phone, watched her face pale as she read the articles, the speculation, the vicious commentary from people who had nothing better to do than destroy others for sport. "Oh." Her voice went small. This is really your life?" "It's the price of visibility." He tried to pull her close again, but she stepped back. "Maddie, I'm your gardener, Theodore." She gestured at herself. Dirty overalls, mud-stained boots, calloused hands. "I don't belong in this world. These people would eat me alive. I don't care what they think. But I do." The words burst out with surprising force. "I care that I'd be the help who seduced the billionaire. I care that every tabloid would paint me as a gold digger. I care that your reputation would suffer because you, kissed the hired help? You're not just..." Theodore felt frustration building. "This is different. We're different." "Are we?" Maddie's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a fairy tale collision with reality. And reality always wins, Theodore." His phone rang. His mother. He declined it. Immediately it rang again. "Answer it," Maddie said quietly. "Face your world. I need to think." She walked away before he could stop her, and Theodore was left standing in the rose garden, phone screaming in his hand, feeling like he'd just lost something precious before he'd fully grasped it. He answered. "Mother, what were you thinking?" Constance Ashford Kane's voice could cut glass. "Victoria is humiliated. The foundation board is questioning your judgment." "And the rumors, Theodore? People are saying you've lost focus." "I left a party early. That's not a capital offense." "You left your own gala to do what exactly?" "No one can find you for over 2 hours. You return looking disheveled, and now the press is circling like sharks." A pause, heavy with implication. "Is there someone?" Theodore closed his eyes. "That's none of your business." "It absolutely is my business when it affects the family reputation. Who is she? Please tell me she's at least from an acceptable family." "She's a gardener, Mother. She plants flowers and talks to koi fish and makes me feel human for the first time in my miserable, controlled existence." The words came out sharp, defensive. "And yes, I care about her. Deeply." Silence. Then, "A gardener. You're throwing away your future for a gardener." "I'm choosing my own happiness for once." "Happiness?" His mother laughed bitterly. "You think happiness matters in our world? Theodore, you have responsibilities, the company, the family legacy, your father's memory. Dad would want me to be happy. Your father would want you to marry appropriately and produce heirs and continue what he built. Her voice cracked slightly. Don't be naive, Theodore. Love fades. Passion dies. But legacy? That endures. After she hung up, Theodore stood there, phone heavy in his hand, feeling the weight of generations pressing down on him. She was right about one thing. His world was brutal, unforgiving. It chewed up people like Maddie and spit them out. Could he really ask her to enter that world? Could he be selfish enough to pull her into his nightmare? That evening, he found Maddie sitting by the fountain, watching the koi swim in lazy circles. She'd been crying. Her eyes were red-rimmed, face blotchy in a way that somehow made her more beautiful. Hey, he said softly, sitting beside her. Hey yourself. She didn't look at him. How was your day of being rich and important? Terrible. I missed you. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. Maddie, I'm sorry. I should have thought about how this would affect you. It's not your fault that your world is insane. She finally looked at him, and the pain in her eyes gutted him. But Theodore, I've been thinking, really thinking, and I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. His chest constricted. For what? For being with you. For dealing with photographers and gossip, and people who'll assume I'm only with you for money. She squeezed his hand. For being the reason you lose respect or business or... You could never be that reason. But I already am. She pulled out her phone, showed him new articles. Worse ones. One speculating about mystery blonde, an inappropriate relationship, and calling into question his business judgment. Theodore felt rage building. Not at her, at them. At a world so twisted that finding happiness became ammunition. We'll fight this, he said firmly. Together. How? By hiding? By pretending we don't care about each other? Maddie's voice broke. Or by you having to constantly defend why you chose someone beneath you? You're not... In their eyes, I am. And eventually, Theodore, you might start to believe it too, when deals fall through because I'm not the right kind of partner, when your mother looks at me like I'm dirt, when every event becomes a battle. She stood up, pulling her hand away. I won't do that to you, or to myself. So what are you saying? Terror clawed at his throat. I'm saying... Maddie wrapped her arms around herself. I'm saying I need time, space, to figure out if I'm brave enough to be the scandal in Theodore Ashford Kane's perfect life. My life isn't perfect. It's empty without you. Pretty words won't change reality. But she was crying now, tears streaming down her beautiful face. I love you. God help me, I'm completely in love with you. But love isn't always enough, is it? She'd said it, the words he'd been desperate to hear. And they felt like goodbye. Maddie, please. I'm not quitting. I'll finish your garden. That's my job. She wiped her face roughly. But we need to stop this, before it destroys us both. She walked away, and Theodore let her go because what could he say? That his mother was wrong? That the world would suddenly accept them? That love conquered all? He'd built an empire on reality, not fairy tales, and reality was tearing them apart. For 3 days, Theodore did exactly what Maddie asked. He gave her space. He watched from windows as she worked in the garden, looking more beautiful and more heartbroken with each passing hour. He attended his meetings, signed his contracts, and felt absolutely nothing. On the 4th day, Clementine knocked on his office door with unusual force. Sir, I'm overstepping. Massively. She walked in without invitation. But I've worked for you for 12 years, and I've never seen you happy. Not once. Until her. Theodore stared at the contract in front of him. He'd been reading the same paragraph for 20 minutes. Clementine, no, you listen. She sat down, something she never did. That girl is down there crying into the hydrangeas. Actually crying. And you're up here being a coward. I'm respecting her wishes. You're letting the world win, Clementine's eyes flashed. Your father didn't build this empire by backing down when things got hard. He certainly didn't raise you to give up the best thing that ever happened to you because some vapid socialites have opinions. Theodore's head snapped up. You didn't even like my father. I didn't like his methods, but I respected his conviction. He chose your mother, despite everyone saying she wasn't enough. Too poor, too plain, too nobody. Clementine leaned forward. Sound familiar? He fought for her. Question is, are you your father's son or not? After she left, Theodore sat in silence. Then he picked up his phone and made 3 calls that would either save everything or destroy what was left of his carefully constructed life. He chose to burn it all down. The next morning, Theodore called a press conference. His PR team panicked. His mother threatened to disown him. His board demanded explanations. He ignored them all. Standing in front of cameras, reporters, and the entire circus that was his life, Theodore Ashford Kane did something unprecedented. He told the truth. For years, I've let my personal life be dictated by expectation, by what was appropriate for someone in my position. He gripped the podium, knuckles white. I've attended the right parties, dated the right people, said the right things, and I've been miserable. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He saw his mother in the back, face pale with horror. Recently, someone entered my life who changed everything. Someone who doesn't care about my money or my status. Someone who sees past the title to the person underneath. Someone who makes me want to be better. His voice softened. Her name is Madeline Flowers. She's my gardener. And I'm completely, irrevocably in love with her. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Theodore raised his hand for silence. I know what you're thinking. Inappropriate. Scandalous. A billionaire and his employee. He smiled, and it felt real for the first time in years. But here's what I've learned. Love doesn't care about tax brackets. It doesn't check your portfolio before it takes root. And it certainly doesn't ask permission from people who've never felt anything real in their entire privileged lives. He looked directly at the camera. At Maddie, wherever she was watching. Maddie, if you're seeing this, and I hope to God you are, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I let you believe for even a second that you weren't worth fighting for. That what we have isn't more important than what they think. His voice cracked slightly. You told me love isn't always enough. You're wrong. Love is the only thing that's ever been enough. Everything else is just noise. He stepped away from the podium, ignoring the chaos of questions, and walked out of the press room with purpose. He found her in the rose garden, naturally. She was on her knees, pruning with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. His entire press conference played on her phone beside her. You're insane, she said without looking up. Completely, certifiably insane. I prefer desperately in love. Theodore knelt beside her in his $3,000 suit, not caring about the dirt. I just tanked my reputation on live television for you. I noticed. She finally looked at him, eyes red but smiling through tears. Your mother is going to murder you. Probably. Worth it. He cupped her face gently. Maddie, I don't care what they say. I don't care if every deal falls through, if every investor walks away, if I have to rebuild everything from nothing. None of it matters without you. Theodore, I love you. I love how you talk to flowers. I love how you named my fish. I love that you see beauty in things everyone else overlooks. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, tasting salt from her tears. I love that you make me feel human. That you make me believe I can be more than just a balance sheet in a suit. I love you too, she whispered. So much it terrifies me. Then be terrified with me. We'll figure it out together. He pulled back to look at her. I'm not saying it'll be easy. People will be cruel. My mother will probably never accept you. Definitely won't. But Maddie, I would rather face that with you than face anything without you. He took her dirt-covered hands in his. "Marry me." Her eyes went wide. "What? Marry me? Not someday, not eventually. Soon as possible." He laughed at his own audacity. "I don't have a ring, I'm kneeling in mud, and I just committed social suicide on national television, but I've never been more certain of anything. You're proposing, in the garden, covered in dirt. You said when I told you I loved you, you wanted to remember every detail." Theodore smiled, that real smile that only she could bring out. "How's your memory?" Maddie laughed through tears and kissed him, deep and real and tasting like forever. "It's perfect. Everything's perfect. And yes, you ridiculous, dramatic, wonderful man. Yes. 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 I'll marry you. Yes, I'll face your terrifying world with you. Yes to all of it." She threw her arms around his neck. "But you're buying me the biggest, gaudiest ring possible. I want everyone to know you're off the market." "Done. Anything else?" "Your mother sits in the back at the wedding." "Deal." They kissed again, and somewhere above them a bird sang. The roses bloomed around them like they were celebrating. The garden had witnessed their beginning, their middle, and now, finally, their happy ever after, beginning to take root. "Your press conference was insane," Maddie murmured against his lips. "I'm willing to be insane for you." "Good. Because you're about to marry a gardener who talks to fish and cries over flowers." "Can't wait." Theodore pulled her closer, breathing her in, earth and roses and home. "Marry me tomorrow." "Be reasonable." "Next week?" "Theodore, I've wasted enough time being reasonable. I want to be yours, legally, publicly, irrevocably yours." He kissed her again. "Say yes." And because Maddie Flowers had never been good at reasonable either, she grinned and said, "Next month, I need a dress. And your mother needs time to plan her coronary." Perfect. It wasn't, of course. The world didn't suddenly become kind. Theodore's mother did, in fact, nearly have that coronary. Several investors pulled out. Society whispered and judged and predicted disaster. But in the rose garden, with dirt under their fingernails and love in their hearts, Theodore and Maddie had everything that mattered. They had each other. And sometimes that really is enough. The wedding was supposed to be small. Maddie had insisted, just close friends, family, nothing extravagant. But Theodore had other plans. If the world was going to watch them anyway, they might as well give them something beautiful to see. So they compromised. A garden wedding. Their garden. The one Maddie had transformed from neglected to magnificent. The one where they'd fallen in love between roses and broken pipes and fish named Bruce. The morning of the wedding, Theodore stood in his bedroom, adjusting his tie for the 15th time. Sebastian, his brother and best man, watched with amusement. "You're nervous." Theodore Ashford Kane, terror of boardrooms, is nervous. "I'm marrying the love of my life in front of 300 people, half of whom think I've lost my mind." Theodore's hands shook slightly. "Of course I'm nervous." "Have you lost your mind?" Theodore thought about Maddie's laugh, her dirt-stained hands, the way she looked at sunrise working in the garden. "Completely. Best decision I ever made." Sebastian clapped his shoulder. "Dad would have liked her. Mom will come around eventually." "Eventually might be never." "Then never it is. You don't need her approval to be happy." Downstairs, in what used to be a guest room and was now Maddie's bridal suite, chaos reigned. Grandma Phyllis sat in her wheelchair, directing operations like a tiny general, while Clementine helped Maddie into her dress. It wasn't a designer gown. Maddie had found it at a vintage shop, ivory lace, simple and elegant, with a crown of fresh flowers from the garden instead of a veil. She looked like a fairy tale, like every romantic dream Theodore had never let himself have. "You're shaking," Clementine observed, fastening the last button. "I'm about to marry a billionaire in front of everyone he knows. I'm allowed to shake." Maddie's reflection smiled back at her. "What if I trip?" What if I say the wrong thing? What if you just focus on him? Phyllis wheeled closer, taking her granddaughter's hand. Darling, I've seen the way that man looks at you. Like you hung the moon and planted the stars. The rest is just noise. Grandma, his mother hasn't spoken to him in 3 weeks. His mother is a fool who'll regret missing this. Phyllis squeezed her hand. Your grandfather and I eloped because his family didn't approve. We had 50 beautiful years together. Sometimes love means choosing each other over everyone else. Maddie knelt down, careful of her dress. I'm scared. Good. Anything worth having is scary. Phyllis kissed her forehead. Now go marry that boy before he paces a hole in the floor. The ceremony took place at sunset, when the garden glowed golden, and every flower seemed to bloom just for them. White chairs lined pathways Maddie had created. Roses climbed arches she'd trained. The fountain, their fountain, sparkled in the background. Theodore stood at the altar, Sebastian beside him, heart hammering as the music began. Then he saw her. Maddie walked down the aisle alone. Phyllis had insisted, said she'd raised herself an independent woman. And she was luminous. The setting sun caught her blonde hair, making her look like an angel descending. Her smile was radiant, eyes locked on his, and Theodore felt every defense, every last wall, crumble completely. She was his, and he was hers. In front of God and 300 witnesses, and his mother, who sat in the very back row looking vaguely homicidal. Hi, Maddie whispered when she reached him, taking his hands. Hi, he managed, voice thick with emotion. You're beautiful. You're not so bad yourself. The officiant cleared his throat. Shall we begin? The ceremony was traditional mostly, except for the vows. They'd written their own. Theodore went first, hands holding hers tightly. Maddie, before you, I didn't know what it meant to be alive. I knew how to win, how to acquire, how to conquer, but I didn't know how to feel. His voice cracked. You taught me that flowers have names, that fish have personalities, that gardens need love as much as water. You taught me that I was worth loving, dirt and all. Maddie's eyes glistened with tears. I promise to always leave work early when you need me, to learn the names of every plant in our garden, to let you talk to the roses without judgment, to choose you every day over everything else. He smiled through his own tears. To be worthy of the extraordinary gift that is your love. Maddie took a shaky breath. Theodore, you once told me gardens are just plants, but gardens are promises. Their hope taking root, their beauty growing from nothing. She squeezed his hands. You are my garden. When I met you, you were all walls and thorns, convinced nothing beautiful could grow in your soil. But I saw what you could become. Theodore's vision blurred. I promised to tend our love like I tend our roses, with patience, dedication, and faith that beautiful things take time. I promise to challenge you when you're being impossible, support you when the world is cruel, and remind you daily that you're more than your bank account. Her smile was radiant. I promise to love you fiercely, completely, and probably while covered in dirt. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Even Theodore's mother's lips twitched. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may... Theodore was already kissing her, dipping her dramatically, while the crowd erupted in applause. When he pulled back, both of them laughing, Maddie whispered, We did it. We did it. He kissed her again, softer. Mrs. Ashford Kane. I'm keeping Flowers as my middle name. I wouldn't have it any other way. The reception was magical. Lights strung through trees, dinner at long tables surrounded by blooms, speeches that made everyone cry and laugh. Sebastian told embarrassing stories about Theodore. Clementine declared them perfect for each other. Phyllis toasted to love conquering all. Even Theodore's mother approached them, stiff and uncomfortable. Madeline, she said formally. Mrs. Ashford Kane. Maddie stood her ground. A long pause. Then, the garden is remarkable. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was a beginning. As midnight approached, Theodore pulled Maddie away from the celebration, leading her to the rose garden where everything had started. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Deliriously." She leaned back against him. "Your mother almost complimented me. Alert the media." He kissed her neck. "Though they're probably already writing about how the billionaire married the help. Let them write. We know the truth." She turned in his arms. "We're not a scandal, Theodore. We're a love story. The best one I know." He kissed her, sweet and deep. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing past the thorns. For believing I could bloom." Theodore rested his forehead against hers. "For teaching me what matters." "And what matters?" "This. You. Us." He gestured at the garden around them. "Building something beautiful together." Maddie smiled, and in that moment, surrounded by flowers they'd grown and love they'd fought for, Theodore Ashford Kane knew something with absolute certainty. He was finally, completely, impossibly home. 5 years later, the garden had expanded exponentially. What started as Theodore's private estate had become the Ashford Flowers Foundation Garden, open to the public twice weekly, with all proceeds going to horticultural education and cancer research in Phyllis's name. Grandma Phyllis had lived 2 more beautiful years after the wedding, long enough to meet her great-granddaughter Eleanor, who'd inherited her mother's green thumb and her father's stubborn determination. "Daddy, you're doing it wrong!" 4-year-old Eleanor stood with hands on hips, blonde curls escaping her sun hat, looking exactly like Maddie when she was being bossy. Theodore looked up from the roses he was pruning. "Am I?" "Mama says you have to cut at 45 degrees. That's barely 40. She demonstrated with tiny hands. "Like this." "My apologies, Professor Eleanor." Theodore adjusted his cut, fighting a smile. "Better?" "Much better." She patted his arm patronizingly. "You're learning, Daddy." Maddie appeared with their 6-month-old son, Alexander, in her arms, laughing at the scene. She still wore overalls sometimes, still got dirt under her nails, still talked to the flowers. But now she also ran a successful landscape consulting business, had published 2 books on sustainable gardening, and somehow made Theodore fall more in love with her every single day. "Teaching Papa the basics again?" Maddie asked Eleanor. "Someone has to." "He's very slow at learning plants." Theodore stood, scooping his daughter up and making her shriek with delight. "Slow? I'll show you slow." He spun her around while she giggled uncontrollably. "Theodore, careful. She just ate." But Maddie was laughing too, that sound that still made his heart race after 5 years. They'd had their struggles, business deals that fell through, social events where people whispered, moments when the pressure felt crushing. Theodore's mother had eventually come around, especially after Eleanor was born, though she still maintained that Maddie was unconventional. But they'd faced it all together, built a life that mattered, created beauty from nothing, just like Maddie had promised. That evening, after the children were asleep and the garden was quiet, Theodore found Maddie sitting by their fountain. Bruce the fish, now elderly in coy years, swam lazy circles with his offspring. "Room for one more?" Theodore asked. "Always." She moved over, letting him sit beside her, his arm automatically wrapping around her shoulders. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint their garden gold. The garden where they'd fought, fallen in love, gotten married. The garden that had witnessed their entire story. "Any regrets?" Maddie asked softly. Theodore pretended to think. "Well, I could have been richer if I'd married Victoria Pemberton Stone. Probably. And more miserable. Definitely. Instead, I got you. Dirt, fish names and all." He kissed the top of her head. "Worst trade ever. Terrible decision." She grinned, tilting her face up for a proper kiss. "Think you'll recover?" "I'll try my best." He kissed her, still electric, still perfect, still home. Mrs. Ashford Kane Flowers. Mr. Ashford Kane, who still can't prune roses properly. They laughed together as stars began appearing in the darkening sky. Their garden bloomed around them, roses and peonies and possibility. Love had taken root in impossible soil, and it had grown into something extraordinary. The end.